It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks to everybody for listening in on what we have to say today. I've been with Ultra about 9 years, and throughout all of those 9 years, we've pretty much been in a virtual environment. And I personally have managed remote global teams, including several hundred people remote from the United States back over to India. Many remote projects and meetings, remote, Ultra's completely virtual, et cetera. So I joined up with Ultra right around 2010, and really from that point forward, we've been in kind of a remote collaboration. So we're standardized in the cloud on Office 365, SharePoint. We use Teams, Zoom, WebEx, a variety of conferencing tools, whiteboarding, calendar sharing, right? So there's a whole range of things. And we covered a lot of that on our first session in the series, in which we just looked at how do you collaborate in a remote environment. I suggest you check that out. And the second is that many of our clients have moved to a remote mode for executing their business processes. And so we spent some time last week covering that. And today what we're going to talk about is some real world examples of how we're collaborating with our clients in this kind of shelter in place environment, and how we're able to progress process improvement and system selections. You know, history is kind of full of examples of companies that during tough times work to strengthen their capabilities and strengthen their market share, and come out on the other side of disrupting events in a much more favorable position. And it's interesting in that I would say over 80% of our clients have continued to move forward with their process improvement and selection efforts and implementation efforts as well. So with that, if you can go on to the next slide, we'll just talk about what we're going to do today. So Danielle heads up our Innovation Center. So she's been kind of front and center for us in terms of ensuring that we've got good standards around how we're collaborating remotely with teams in the field. And she's going to kind of moderate. Kyle is a senior project manager over one of our largest engagements. It's a several hundred user, 25 plus sites, et cetera. And he's facilitating a business process improvement effort. And so he's going to talk about how that's going. And then Shannon is one of our outstanding selection consultants, and she's been kind of front and center going through remote demos and the system selection. So they're going to kind of just share with you their learnings in the scope of those two projects. And feel free to submit your questions via chat, and I'll see you after these guys finish up. So over to you, Danielle.
Perfect. So just a brief overview. As Kristen mentioned earlier, we have 4 different phases that we look at as projects. The first one is a business process improvement, and the second one is technology selection. So those will be the 2 that we focus on projects that are in each of those phases today. In the business process improvement, there are 5 different kind of buckets of work. The first one is around getting organized. The second one's around mapping out and making sure we have a clear understanding of the future state. Next comes visioning and education, which is all around, imagining what's possible, what the future looks like. And that leads into developing the future state, and eventually getting to that business case for change for what is the drivers and where will we see the return on our investment for our project. All right, so Kyle, if you just give us a brief overview of the project, the type of company it is, and how you guys are going about it.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Appreciate it. Good morning or afternoon, depending on where you are. I'm going to spend a little bit of time reviewing with you a complex project that I'm working on, what exactly we've been working to be successful remotely, and exactly what type of standards we put in place in order to really find success in a virtual remote environment. The project that I'm overseeing right now, as I said, is extremely complex, over a $1 billion revenue organization. A lot of employees spread across North America, both in the United States and in Canada, with 30 independent manufacturing plants and a number of distinctive processes that we've identified as a team. This project has a wide range of products, has a wide range of personalities, a wide range of approaches, and understanding for exactly how we should proceed in being successful at this organization. And I'm going to be talking through a little bit more about exactly what we did to be successful. We have 250 total team members. We have 9 unique work streams, which I think Rich and Danielle spoke a little bit about previously. Amongst those work streams, we have a number of unique participants. We have 3 different governing teams, such as our steering team, our executive team, and our operational team, a number of diverse subject matter experts, and 3 independent consulting teams, including Ultra, that are there on site. So obviously a lot of moving parts, a lot of people wearing multiple hats, and it creates a lot of churn, a lot of difficulty in success moving forward.
So now let's talk a little bit about the tools that have allowed you to keep this project going at pretty much the same speed that it was going before.
Absolutely. And the key to this whole thing, and I can't emphasize this enough, is your communication strategy. You can have a number of tools that you might utilize in order to be successful. Microsoft SharePoint and Microsoft Teams are two tools that we utilize quite extensively. Email and phone is something that we utilize extensively as well. But our communication strategy is absolutely pivotal. Understanding who you should speak to at what time and in what context, bringing people together for an understanding of what we need to accomplish moving forward, but also extremely importantly, bringing people together from a change management perspective. You know, there's a saying that the technology doesn't talk back, the people talk back, and that oftentimes is a very challenging scenario. So having a very succinct communication strategy, having understanding for who are the decision makers in the organization, who's accountable, and who simply needs to be informed at the organization is absolutely crucial in ensuring that you'll be successful both in a virtual environment and in person.
So you guys are pretty much right in the midst of the business process improvement project. Can you talk a little bit about some of the stuff that's been easier to do virtually and maybe some of the activities that are a little bit more challenging to do virtually and how you've gone about those?
Absolutely. And I like this depiction of this process flow because it really puts in perspective the number of crucial touch points that you have as you move through completing project activities. You'll see from the blue boxes here those are joint meetings that we held together with the client. The blue and red boxes are Ultra that did work and then the client validating, but again, another touch point. The red boxes are really the only boxes where we've done work independently, where we're not touching base with the client. So how do you do that? You know, how exactly do you come together as a team and as a group in a virtual environment and do it in a successful fashion? And I think, you know, again, that just goes back to communication, ensuring that you're planning well and that you're over communicating, you know, exactly what needs to be accomplished. How are you going to accomplish that? And everyone is very confident in the plan that you have moving forward.
So what are some of the lessons learned? I mean, it's obviously a very complex project. What are some of the key things in the future that you've learned throughout this process?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of those, but I called out, you know, some things that I think sometimes are overlooked, you know, some things that I think are absolutely, you know, paramount to our success and what we've done at that organization so far. You know, over communicating, which I've talked about already, but you know, investing in reliable technology, ensuring that you are able to communicate, you know, both from the audio and the visual perspective, ensuring that you're testing your functionality out before you jump into these meetings. I think that's absolutely paramount. Knowing your colleagues, I think that's something that's often overlooked because you really need to understand who your colleagues are. And by that, I mean, are they one to show up on time? Are they one to be late? Understanding exactly what types of behaviors that they engage in will lead you to better outcomes when moving forward, you know, with your different meetings and with your different touch points with that client.
So how do you assign work in the virtual environment? How do you know that stuff's done? Like, how do you keep tabs of stuff given all these like remote workers?
So, I mean, I think there's a number of ways to do that. I personally like utilizing SharePoint a lot. There's a lot of functionality with SharePoint that can produce great outcomes there. I think that, you know, one way that we use SharePoint is, you know, we tag our different deliverables. We'll tag them with different tags such as, are they a work in process? Are they complete? Have they been approved? Have they been signed off? Additionally, we will log action items in SharePoint as well. We'll assign those action items to different individuals with dates assigned to those action items. So that's extremely important, I feel, in getting the work done. And then just having a very robust project plan, you know, ensuring that you have a really sound source of truth, you know, single source of truth for what you're driving towards. Obviously, that might not be practical to review all the time with the team, but having something there in the background, some structure that you can take to then break down into small pieces and help people understand exactly what is expected of them, both in the short term, near term, and then, you know, what are our milestones, what are our end goals? You know?
So that's interesting. So you're taking kind of like shell documents, putting them out in SharePoint, and then basically kind of assigning work into those shell documents, and then you're kind of controlling the completion state of the document and sign-offs through SharePoint, right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, exactly. There's a number of tools that you can use. They can be effective depending on what organization you're at, the culture of that organization, how people respond to different communication based on the tools. But you want to make sure that you're not, overutilizing your tools. You want to make sure that you're not, your tools aren't becoming a burden to you. You want to ensure that, these tools they're empowering you to make actionable, intelligent decisions, and delegate effectively and delegate to the right individuals.
Okay, I have one more question, which is there like an optimal size that you found, right? Because this is a large team that you're working with. Can you effectively bring like 40 people onto a call and collaborate, or like, how do you handle all these people in these big teams?
Yeah, knowing your audience and knowing what's going to be effective or not effective is extremely critical. That's one of the reasons why we have so many sub teams broken apart. We'll have an operational team, a steering team. We'll have a team specific with finance. We have work stream leads for all of our 9 work streams and people assigned specifically to those work streams. So it's just understanding, when you're going through these various levels of approval, bringing all 40 people into a session to try to make decisions is almost always going to lead to struggles and probably not going to give you the result that you want. So you want to make sure that when you're making decisions and putting information in front of the client to make actionable decisions, that you're bringing the right personnel in and you're bringing the right decision makers in first, and then communicating that decision then to the larger group, I think, afterwards.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. Any last-minute words before we hand it over to Shannon to do her overview?
The last thing I want to leave you guys with is, ensure, I think it's often overlooked in a virtual environment to know when to log in and log out. Ensure that you're taking time for yourself, for self-care, and ensure that you really have a good work-life balance, which I know can be extremely challenging. But just put effort into that. And thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Kyle. All right. Before I turn it over to Shannon, just a little bit about our technology selection. So it's also divided up into 5 different phases, starting with alignment. Then we narrow it down to, in the qualification phase, to around a long list of, say, 6 to 8 vendors. And then throughout this process, it gets narrowed down to eventually who our client's chosen ERP vendor is, or not necessarily ERP, but whatever technology selection project we're working on at the time. So with that being said, Shannon, do you want to give us a brief overview of where you are in the process, what's going on, and how you're taking care of it on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, sure. Right now we're in the process of doing a selection with one of our customers, and it was kind of a pivotal moment where we decided with the team, is this something that we needed to put off, or can we go through with the selection remotely? Ultimately, we decided that we had all the tools in place that we could do that. And then with Ultra being so confident working remotely, we were able to instill that confidence into them as well. So this client right now, they're high volume manufacturing, Windows balances, and hardware accessories. They are multi-site, so 6 in the US, 2 international sites. So definitely not as big as Kyle's project, but still a pretty decently sized company. The tools that we decided to use going in were Zoom, SharePoint. We realized about halfway through that we needed to use Google Hangouts and then leverage Microsoft Teams more. Zoom was decided on because that is what the client was comfortable with using. So we went with that just to make sure that they were comfortable. So as we went through the project, there were some things that we knew we had to do remote versus, in person. I know Danielle asked a little bit earlier, what are some of the things that are harder to do remote versus in person? So the first one was vendor qualification. So what we did was we had remote meetings. It was 2 hours per software vendor. At that point, we had a long list of vendors. So we ended up having about 12 hours total. So there were 6 vendors on the list, 2 hours per vendor. So 12 hours of work, and that was with the process owners. So everyone on the team that owned their different work stream, they were included in those meetings. So we did all of those remotely, and we did score them, and we scored them virtually using spreadsheets. Based on that, we did reduce down to a short list of 3 vendors. That was where we kind of had to make the decision that we really could not do a discovery remotely. So the point of the discovery, right, is to have the vendor get really accustomed to who the customer is, what they do on a day-to-day basis, and what's important to them. So we decided we needed to do that in person. So we had an in-person discovery day, 1 day per software vendor. So
and that was really prior to everyone being on stay-at-home orders, correct?
Correct. That was about
Yeah.
literally a week before the shelter-in-place order. So luckily, we were able to do that in person, and I would say that's probably one thing that would be hard to do remotely. I'm sure it would be possible, but it would have to be very structured. So as we went into functional demos, we were able to do remote demos. I would say the biggest thing is to have a structured agenda. So what we did was we had about 40 attendees on each of these demos, which was a lot for 8 hours. And it was 6 days total of this. So 6 8-hour days of demos was a lot. The biggest thing is to stick to your agenda. So we had at the beginning time set out for the vendor to practice with the technology. So before you start your day, practice using Zoom, practice logging in, sharing screens and all that, and then schedule breaks throughout your day. So also stick to the agenda, right? Everyone's at home, they've got their kids, they're probably multitasking. You don't want to make rash decisions throughout the day and change it around. You want to stick to it. If there's things that you weren't able to cover during that time, definitely make a parking lot list and schedule a follow-up meeting. But absolutely stick to the agenda and make sure it's as detailed as possible.
So, like you said, sticking to the agenda is super important, but there's 40 people that have questions that probably are coming out throughout the day. How are you guys capturing all the questions from everyone and making sure you were getting answers without completely derailing the agenda? Yeah, exactly. So a lot of times what we had to do was pause pretty often for questions. And what we did was after each of the sections, you can see on the agenda there, we would pause and make sure that everybody had all of their scoring for that section completed. If they didn't have a scoring line completed, then they should speak up and ask that question. Another thing is a lot of people maybe don't feel comfortable with 40 folks on the phone speaking up and asking a question. So we did leverage some of the chat capabilities that people could submit questions through there as well. All right, so I think we talked about most of these things, but I think one of the key bullet points on here is around that okay to interrupt, especially with these demos if people aren't following.
Exactly. I think that last bullet on there, okay to interrupt, was definitely the hardest culture shift for the team going into remote demonstrations. You can't feel like you're being lectured at and that you have to wait till the end of the day before you can ask questions. You need to immediately let the team know. So when you start in the morning at 8 a.m., say, hey guys, it's okay to interrupt. Please interrupt us at any time. Make that known because it's really important if you're not understanding something that you speak up and that you just cut off whoever's presenting. So that was hard to get used to, but as we went along, the team got really, really good at doing that, so it helped.
Talk to me a little bit about the digital scorecards. So our scorecards are a big part of these detailed demos, capturing gaps, or really we try to use as many facts when helping our client make a decision of their preferred vendor, such as scoring. So how do the digital scorecards work? Were people able to watch the video as well as fill out the scorecards? Yeah, so definitely I've suggested everyone do is use their Excel sheets and follow along on their scorecards and score while the demo was going on. We did have each of them recorded, so every section was recorded separately, which was nice because they were posted in SharePoint after, so if you missed a section, you could go back. But it was really important that the team tried to score as they went. As you can see in the one picture, that would be a split screen example. So what a lot of the folks were doing on the call was splitting their screen. One screen was their scorecard and one screen was the demonstration. If you have multiple monitors, that would also be really helpful as well. So they were able to easily follow along down the scorecard and also watch the demonstration as it was going on with no need to print out anything.